Hello and welcome to the Ellen Made Book Club and my May reading wrap-up. In May, I participated in Escape the Readathon, which is a competitive readathon created and hosted by Lexie at Books with Lexie, and that was a lot of fun. I had picked out 12 books to read for the different prompts, and I wasn't expecting to read all of them, and I didn't, but I did end up reading and finishing 12 other books. Some of them overlap, but the final list looks a lot different from my planned list. And then I also started a bunch of books that I didn't finish for different reasons, and I will get into that as we get into the wrap-up. But I did end up reading a lot, and a lot more than I usually do in a month. I think I'm usually at 4 to 6 books maybe per month, and this month I read 12. I will say I didn't put up a single video all month. I was just so focused on reading the books and sort of keeping up with the chat in the Discord, and it sort of took over everything, which is fine. And I wanted the full experience of it. It was kind of an experiment to see if it would motivate me to read more, and I guess it did. But like I said, it also meant that I was making a lot less videos. Overall, it was a fun time, but it's not something that would be sustainable for me to do every single month, at least not to that extent. I will put up somewhere on the screen what prompt I read each book for, but I think that's mostly interesting to anyone else who participated, and so, I'm not gonna talk too much about that. I'm just gonna put it up on the screen, and then I'm gonna talk about the books. First of all, I just wanted to mention Good People by Patmeena Sabit. I finished this in April, and I mentioned it in my April wrap-up video, but I filmed that sort of early, the 25th or something, and so I hadn't finished this then, but I have since. I really enjoyed it. I think I ended up giving it 4 stars. It's about this family who are from Afghanistan and have moved to the US, and the father has really made a journey in terms of financial stability and status within the community. They have become very successful and wealthy, and then something happens. There's a tragic event, and we hear about it from all over the people around this family, their friends, their community members, from the media, from teachers and neighbors and things. And we get a lot of different perspectives on this event that has occurred, and how perspectives shift and how attitudes shift, and I just think it's a very interesting book to read. I don't think that it has, all of the answers or that it pushes a specific perspective. I just think it shows a lot of different ways to look at this one thing, and different ways to approach it, and how different people can perceive it and the judgments that come with that. I'm being very vague on purpose. I don't want to say too much. It does say in the the blurb, the synopsis, what the event is, but I think that you don't have to know that going into it. I think it adds to the suspense, I guess, and the tension in the book. Not knowing what's going to happen is not going to ruin the experience for you if you do know what's going to happen, but it's just, I like knowing less, but definitely a lot of discussions about culture and the clashes that can occur, and things that are problematic but are not always so black and white. And so if you like those kinds of stories, this one is very well written and a very enjoyable and thought-provoking read. I have a lot of books to get through, so I'm gonna try to keep up my pace a little bit, and yeah, we'll see how that goes. The first book that I ended up finishing in May is the one that I would probably like to talk about the most, but I'm gonna keep it kind of brief in this video. But that is Yesteryear by Caro Burke. It follows a woman who is a tradwife influencer, and then she suddenly wakes up in the 1800s and has to sort of live as she is pretending to live on social media. In real life, she has a lot of help and a lot of machinery and things that people would not have had access to in the 1800s. That sort of thought experiment is very interesting, and this book is very interesting. And I do have a lot of thoughts and feelings and opinions and things about this book and the issues that it races that I think are very interesting to talk about. I've seen some other people read this book, and the one thing that everybody says is that the main character is very unlikable, and I do agree with that. She's not a saint by any means. She's no angel, and she, like, we are in her head and we get her judgmental thoughts, and she's not being very nice to a lot of people. But it also annoys me that that is sort of the main takeaway from this book, because like, even though she obviously is responsible for her own actions and her own thoughts and how she lives her life, she is also in a context. I don't think that she is, very well. I think she has a lot of issues, and I also think that she is in a society and a circumstance and a community and an environment where her actions are made possible. And I also think that there are so many other things in this book that are touched on that I haven't really seen people sort of talk about in videos, and I guess I'm not going to dive too deep into that in this video either. I'm not sure if I'm going to make a specific video about this book or not. I feel like I would have to reread it to do that. But there's things like the manosphere and politics and mechanisms that go on in abusive relationships and isolation, and like there's just so many things, like social media and how we talk to people on social media. I just feel like this main character is not very well liked, but she's also sort of representing people like influencers, obviously tradwife influencers in particular. And I find it weird that, like, we all know that stuff on the internet is not to be trusted necessarily. Everything we see on social media, including like this video, I have lights going and like I've chosen books to display, and like everything is always a little bit polished, a little bit edited. There's a spectrum, but I think we all know by now that things are not necessarily what they seem to be on social media. And yet when there's a woman who is portraying a lifestyle, and yes, they are saying like, this is how we live, and that's not just the truth, that's, lying, and that's not good, obviously. But also like the types of comments and the criticisms that are just like, it's always the woman who is trying her best to do something that gets all the criticism. The discussion is not about religion or politics or societal demands. It's not about what makes a woman want to do that. And I think that's more interesting to talk about. And I also saw a video about, there's this American creator who is living in Norway, I think, and she makes a lot of videos about sort of Scandinavian culture versus American culture. And she was talking in a video about the tradwife phenomenon and how that is not really a thing here in Scandinavia. Most women here are happy to be independent and to be working, and there's not as much religion here playing a part in people's lives. Like, there are obviously people who are religious here as well, but like it's not as big of a thing. We have a lot more social security. Like, that's, I'm just scratching the surface, but it's just such an interesting phenomenon, and it doesn't happen in a vacuum, and it doesn't happen without the bigger context. And so I just wish that more of the discussions were about that and not about how unlikable this main character is. You don't have to like tradwives or the tradwife movement, and there are lots of things that are problematic with that, but I don't know. I have a lot of mixed feelings, and I also had a lot of empathy for this main character, even though she's not perfect, but like just the expectation that she is supposed to be perfect, I don't know. There's a lot to think about and to feel reading this book. It's definitely worth reading, and it's worth having those discussions. I also saw Sherilyn talk about how she did not enjoy this book, but she had so many interesting discussions come from it with different people, and so like she was appreciative of that, but also like did not enjoy this book. So she was like mad at the fact that it was sparking so many discussions, and I think that's a good book. A book doesn't always have to be enjoyable and fun the whole way through. Like, if it's provoking thought and provoking conversations, that's a good book. It's also so pretty, so like 5 stars. These are not my full thoughts about those topics or about this book necessarily. I think the book itself is an interesting read, and it's an interesting way of telling a story with the time jumps and everything and like the backstory that we get. I enjoyed it. I was laughing and I was crying and I was angry. It made me feel a lot, it made me think a lot, and it made me want to talk about it a lot. And so I think those are marks of a great book. Moving on to the next book I finished, which was There Is No Antimemetics Division by qntm. This is a science fiction, horror, dystopian kind of book, and it's very weird, and I'm not sure I got it 100%. I'm not sure I enjoyed it, but I also kind of did. It's about these people who work in the Antimemetics Division. There are anti-memes that can mess with your memory and like delete memories, and there are also sort of time jumps where it feels that way because people's memories are erased and then someone has to like fill in the blanks. It's just very confusing at times. And then there are also these anti-memes which are like, they're creatures, but they're also creatures that are made to be forgotten, so they are sort of fighting something that they can't remember. And so it's very weird. It's an interesting thought experiment. Like I said, I'm not sure I could follow the story all the time or if it was as interesting as I would have hoped. I think if you like more sci-fi and like books that mess with your head a little bit, it's an interesting one to try. The next book I started was You Killed Me First by John Mars, which is a thriller, and it starts out very dramatically with this woman who is waking up and realizing that she is in a fire. Her hands are tied and she can't move, and she gets this phone call and someone is like, haha, I killed you first. And then the story starts by going back in time, everything leading up to this moment with the woman in the fire. We don't know who the woman is, we don't know who the caller is, and why this is all happening. I think I got about 50 pages in and then I DNF'd it. I've heard a lot of good things about John Mars as an author and his stories. This one just didn't do it for me. I didn't like the writing particularly. There's this, I don't know if there's like an arrogant tone or what it is, but it was something about the writing that I was just not enjoying. And then the story also follows these three women who are neighbors, and one of them is new to the area and is like this perfect woman with perfect body, perfect house, perfect everything. One of the other women who's already living in this area is immediately like her enemy, and she just hates her based on being perfect. It just annoyed me. I think the fact that it's a male author played into that, but it was just also so, it just feels so done, and it's just like, oh, here are these women and they immediately hate each other and are enemies. If there was some kind of action, like something that someone did to the other person, fine, but in this case it just seemed like she's perfect and I'm gonna hate her and I'm gonna be like rude and obnoxious, and I don't know, they just felt kind of stereotypical. I'm kind of over the whole competitive women thing in that sense. Like, women are also very supportive of each other and are usually happy to see each other because it's like, ooh, maybe that's someone I can be friends with. And it's just, we don't always jump to like, I hate you based on nothing. It just got old, and so I DNF'd that one. I also think I realized that I don't like this like big dramatic beginning and then the tension just immediately drops, and we're just like going back in time and then slowly working towards this probably big finale at the end. And it's just like, I want the tension to build and like sort of be at a medium level throughout. I don't want this like big drop. The next book I picked up was much better. That is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, which I have never read before. I've seen the first movie and maybe the second, but I don't think so. I listened to the audiobook of this at the same time as I was reading the physical copy, and I really enjoyed that experience. I don't think I need to get into the story. It's a dystopian adventure kind of book with these teenagers who are fighting to survive. It was a very enjoyable read. Perfect example of keeping the tension high throughout the book instead of this like big thing at the beginning and then just dropping into bitchiness in the neighborhood. I found this copy secondhand and I don't have copies of the next two books in the series, so I figure I will try to get those from the library and continue to immersion read those probably. Easy 5 stars for this one. Next, I read The Most by Jessica Anthony, which is a short little book, which I really enjoyed. I think I was expecting a little bit more from this story, but I had also heard that it was kind of like not doing a lot. And so I think my expectations were managed, but I was still like hoping for something more, like that I would have a different experience of it. But I do agree not a lot happens, but there is also drama and intrigue, and I think that was really well done. It's about this woman who on a random Sunday decides to stay in the pool instead of going to church with her husband and her kids. And then she just stays there. And so while she is in there, she is sort of reminiscing about things in her life and in the relationship to her husband. And there are some things that have occurred that have sort of sparked this pool day. I really enjoyed the writing. I enjoyed the reminiscing and all of that. It wasn't a new favorite, but I did enjoy it. And so I think I landed on like 3.5 stars. I don't really do half stars, so I probably gave it 4 stars on like Goodreads and Storygraph and things. I would recommend it, but I also can see how it's not everyone's cup of tea. But yeah, I really liked this one. Then I started Our Numbered Bones by Katya Balen. This is a book that has been recommended by Keri at Keri Books. She really loved it. It's a Welsh author. Welsh, an author from Wales. It's about this woman who, I can't remember exactly, but there's something happening in her life and she sort of needs to, I think she's a writer and she needs some space to write, and so she goes out into the countryside and sort of rents a place, a cottage or something, and then she goes on a walk and there's a body that is found in like the marshes. I loved the writing in this book and I'm intrigued to continue it, but I had to return it to the library. I had requested for them to purchase it and then someone got in line like immediately. So yeah, I'm gonna need to get that back. I think I got maybe like 10 or 20 pages in, so like not far at all, but I do want to continue that one. And then I listened to Dissection of a Murder by Joe Murray, a legal thriller, which I very much enjoyed. I think I sort of sped through it a little bit too much because of the readathon and like trying to get through pages quickly. And so I wish I had taken my time a little bit more with that one. I still enjoyed it, but I think it was worth not rushing through. I think I would have enjoyed it more if I had taken my time with it a little bit more. It's about this woman who is a lawyer and she is specifically requested by this man who is accused of murder, and her opponent is her husband who's also a lawyer. That's an interesting dynamic and it's a very interesting book. It does do something that I am not the biggest fan of in terms of like the, you know, I don't want to say too much, but like there's an element to the thing that is not my favorite, but I still think it's well done. It's an interesting story, and that thing that I don't really like might not, you know, bother someone else, so I don't want to say what the thing is. It's not a 5-star for me, but it was a very good book and it reminded me that I enjoy legal thrillers and I enjoy that, like following the characters while they are looking for clues and trying to figure out things and going to like interview people and just like exploring the case. I think that's very interesting to read about. It's a very good legal thriller if you're interested, and I think that's all I'm gonna say. Next, I finally got to A Short Stay in Hell by Stephen L. Peck. This has been on many a TBR. This is about a man, a Mormon man, who dies and ends up in a hell that he hadn't expected. And I guess he wasn't expecting to go to hell at all. When he gets there, he is sort of chosen to go to this specific kind of hell, which is a huge sort of library with all of the books that could ever have been written, and the only way for him to get out of there is to find his life story in a book. On the back it's said to be a haunting existential novella, and I took that to mean something more. I think it's very much just in this library and him spending time there and like spending a really long time there, which is fine. I think I thought it was going to be more about the stories in the books and like how, I don't know, maybe something about the morality of your life and like the mistakes you made, and like if you were to read your story in a book, like who would you judge, and would you think that you were a likable main character or an unlikable main character. Maybe like perspectives on your life, like your story from your perspective would look like this, but your life story from another person's perspective that knows you would look different. And so, I don't know, I just thought it was going to explore those kinds of things more. The trick to finding your story in a book was more due to the fact that like the letters are all like random. So you have every single combination of letters and symbols and things in the books. So not a lot of them make sense. And so when there's a book where there's like 3 words in a sequence that sort of makes sense, then they're all freaking out and they're like, these 3 words have to mean something, and they, you know, assign all of this meaning to these words, and like it's a huge thing and they have to celebrate. And like I think that was a kind of boring way to do it, because it's just impossible, obviously, to find your entire life story in a book in a library where that's the kinds of books you have. You know, it's not even about reading a book and examining whether or not that fits your life or not, you know, and like finding the truth about how things actually were and like compared to how you perceived the situation and things like that. I don't know. I think that would have been a lot more interesting. I'm assuming that wouldn't fit into a book this short. As a story and as a book, I don't think it was as interesting as it could have been, and I would much prefer to read a book where someone is actually examining their lives and, you know, their life choices in a more critical way. This was more just like, oh my gosh, we're going to be here for a real long time, and so what do we do now? I don't know. I think the next book I finished was 5 by Ilona Bannister. That story starts out at a suburban train station where there are 5 main characters, and we know that the train is arriving in about 5 minutes, and within that time frame, one of these 5 characters is going to die, but we don't know which one or how or why. And then we get into the backstory of each of these 5 characters, sort of one at a time, and then in between these backstories we come back to the train station, and you know, the story moves forward there. I thought the writing was very good. I thought the backstories were all interesting. They felt very human and very real. They were emotional to read, some more than others, but yeah, as a whole I think the book was very well done and very suspenseful and yeah, emotional and just really good. I'm not going to talk too much about it because I already talked about it in the vlog as well, but I ended up giving that 5 stars and would definitely recommend it if you like sort of a literary thriller. It's not like super fast paced and like action packed and there's not like a chase or anything. It's not that kind of thriller, but there is a suspense to it and you really do care for these characters. None of them are perfect. They're all very flawed and they all have done questionable things and things like that, but I also found myself having a lot of empathy for all of them, and if those are the kinds of books you enjoy, this is a really good one. Next, I finished Rose House by Arkady Martine, which is a science fiction book about this house and this man who had it. And the house is like an AI house, and there's this woman who used to be, like this man used to be her mentor, and so she is now the only person who has access to this house after this man passed away. And so when the police get notified by this AI house that there is a dead body in this house, she's obviously immediately a suspect and sort of part of this investigation. I enjoyed it. I thought it was going to be more of a horror book, I think. It's not something that, you know, blew my mind or anything, but it was enjoyable enough and it was an interesting read. I'm glad to have read it to see what it's about and just a different kind of story than I usually read. I think the story is a lot easier to follow than, for instance, There Is No Antimemetics Division. This one is a more linear story. It's not very long, so like not a lot can happen. I don't know if there was much of a point to it or like a message behind it, but there doesn't always have to be one. It was fun, it was interesting, and yeah, I gave it 3 stars. I liked it. Another book that was just fine was The Island by Catherine Cooper, which I listened to on audiobook. It's a thriller set in this like exclusive hotel that is about to open in the Maldives, I think. There are these like journalists and influencers who are invited to come to this hotel and stay there before it's going to open. So they're like getting an exclusive opportunity to visit and, you know, write about it and be a part of the launch for this hotel. There's a storm and the internet connection is broken, and so they have no communications with the outside world, and people start dying. I don't think it's a fantastic book, but the story was entertaining enough. There's, you know, intrigue and drama and lots of threads, and the solution made sense. So like it was not unfigure-outable, which I think is fine. I would much prefer to figure out the solution before the reveal than to have the reveal and then be like, what? That doesn't even make sense, or like we didn't even get that information. It was fine. It was a nice summary read. They are in a luxury hotel in the Maldives, and so it's a fun thriller. I mainly picked it for the isolated setting prompt and ended up giving it 3 stars. And then I have this short little book that I have from the library, which is called Wild Boar by Hannah Lutz, and this is a Swedish author, and I have the Swedish edition, but there is also a translation to English. I mainly picked this up because of the title. If you have been seeing any vlogs of mine from my cabin, you will have seen that the wild boar have had some fun in the garden there and caused a lot of destruction. This story is set not very far from there, so this book fulfills a prompt on Melinda's challenge at A Web of Stories. She has a challenge with 12 prompts, and there's a prompt on there to read a book that is set where you live, and like this is close enough to my experience of living where I live. And then it also fits one of the Savage prompts for this year, which is wild, and it has wild in the title, and so that fits. There's not a lot of plot to this story, and I kind of wish there was more. We're following a few different characters in this area, and it's sort of connected to Wild Boar, and they are having discussions about Wild Boar, and there are a few different perspectives on it. One of the characters is sort of fascinated by them and wants to make a documentary about them. Someone else is just there with their father, I think, who is not doing very well, and there's some attempt to sort of jog his memory about things and be happy. I really enjoyed it somehow. The writing is good, and it was very evocative, I guess is the word, like with very little. I do think that there is more to explore here. I think this could be a really good novel with everything being fleshed out and added some drama into it. I think that Wild Boar can be a very controversial topic just because of how much they destroy in people's gardens and people's, farming and stuff. And then there's, animal rights activists and, there are different interests that come in to the topic of Wild Boar. There's more of a story here than we got, but I still think that for what it is, it's done very well. So if you want to read something short by a Swedish author for Women in Translation Month in August, this one could be an interesting option. Just know that it's not plot heavy, but it's just like a glimpse into a few different people and not a lot happens, but yeah, it's still good, I think. I read Strange Pictures by Uketsu. This is a sort of horror-adjacent mystery, I would say. It is kind of creepy and some things are a bit more suspenseful. It's written in different sections, focusing on different things, and somehow it's all sort of connected. I will say that I was pretty sure who the villain was from the first chapter, and so I was like, if this is the case, I'm kind of disappointed because I don't want it to be that obvious. It turned out to be that way, even though I didn't have the full story, obviously, because there was more things added onto it. As I said, I would prefer that to the reveal not making any sense at all, but it was still a little bit early to sort of know that already. But I still enjoyed it, and I still think it's a very fun book, and I love the concept of having images and little graphs and things and little maps and just getting the clues that they are looking at in the book to get to see those as a reader as well. So I really enjoyed it, and I think it's very cleverly done, and I do want to read the other ones, Strange Houses and Strange Buildings. There was something in the text, in the logic of it, that I was like, that doesn't make sense. So I don't think it's a perfect book. I don't think everything connects, and I would also like to see a timeline of everything that happened, because I'm sure it all adds up, but to me it sort of felt a bit jumbled at times. I probably expected it to be a bit more like mind-blowing just because of the hype that these books have gotten, but like it's still enjoyable, and like it is what it is, and that's completely fine. I had a really good time reading this. Let's do Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas next, and now it got really dark. The sun is in and out. This is a young adult fantasy following a trans boy who is trying to prove himself as a brujo, and to do that he needs to do some things with spirits and like help them cross over to the other side. I got about 60 pages in this one, and then I decided to not continue it, which I was really sad about because I have heard nothing but good things about this book. I wanted to enjoy it, but I just didn't. I didn't connect to the characters. It felt a little bit too young adult to me. They were like, hell yeah, and like, let's go, I've got your back. And it just felt a little bit juvenile to me, which is fine. I'm not the target audience for this, but yeah, it didn't work for me. And there was also repetition in, like, there were certain phrases. I think the phrase a dull ache, or like fading to a dull ache, was repeated like at least 5 times in like the first 30 pages or so. Like, that was just too much repetition for me, and it didn't give me confidence that the writing was going to be good throughout the book. And then paired with the young adult thing and the I don't know, I just wasn't connecting with the mystery of it. I didn't care. So sad about that. I'm sure it's fantastic for other people. It wasn't for me, so sadly I'm DNFing this one. Just 3 books left now. The first one I will mention is White Cat, Black Dog by Kelly Link. I read one of the short stories in here called The Game of Smash and Recovery. I could not even tell you what it's about. It's supposed to be a Hansel and Gretel retelling. I think it was set in space. I don't remember a lot of it. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't see the point of it. I have enjoyed the other stories in this, like at least a 3-star amount. This one I gave 2 stars. It was okay, but like I didn't see the point of it. I'm getting closer to finishing this, so that's good. I also started Travel Light by Naomi Mitchison. It's very bright now, I'm sorry. This is a classic fantasy story, like a fairy tale kind of story. It's about this girl called Hala, who is the daughter of a king, cast out as a baby into a world of danger and enchantment. She's raised by bears, lives among dragons, converses with valkyries, and scorns warmongering heroes. Yeah, that's pretty much wrapping up the first 50 or so pages that I've read so far. This is a current ongoing read that I did start in May, and I'm continuing now in June and enjoying so far, but like taking my time with. The last book I finished in May was Hekate by Nikita Gill, which is a YA retelling of Greek mythology about Hekate. She is the daughter of Asteria, and there's the war between the Titans and the Olympians, and so when the Olympians win, all of the Titans and like the people connected to that are punished in some way. And so her mother Asteria is chased away by Zeus and Poseidon, and Hekate is sent to the underworld to be cared for by Styx and Hades. This story is told in verse, and like there are some parts that are just sort of regular prose, but it makes it a very quick read and a very enjoyable read. The audiobook is great. It's narrated by the author herself, and it doesn't sound like verse. It's not written in like a very sort of staccato kind of poem way. It doesn't rhyme. It just flows like a natural text and is very enjoyable to listen to. I enjoyed the story as well, but I mostly just enjoyed the vibes and the characters and yeah, the adventure. I enjoyed it a lot. It doesn't feel juvenile. It is a coming of age story, and like the main character is younger, but the themes aren't juvenile, and the dialogue isn't juvenile, and the narration isn't juvenile. So yeah, I had a really good time with this. I think it's very accessible to a lot of people, and a good 5. And I also think it's a good one to try if you are a bit scared to read something written in verse. Like I had never written, no, I don't think I have ever read a novel written in verse before, but this was no issue at all. Highly recommend. There is a part 2 coming out in the fall about Styx, and yeah, I'm very excited to get to that one eventually. That's the end of this very long wrap up. I will just mention my favorites. Yesteryear by Caro Burke, 5 stars. The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, 5 stars. Strange Pictures by Uketsu, 4 stars. Hekate by Nikita Gill, 4 stars. And then my last 5 stars was 5 by Ilona Bannister. I would love to hear what your favorite read in May was, so please feel free to share and give us some good book recommendations. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next one.